War. At this point, I knew Jim was calling all the shots. He gave me that money so he could financially control me. Jim knew exactly where every dollar I spent went. On the phone, I told him I did not want to go back to Florida to fight Amy in court. Dallas did not want to live with her anymore. Actually, he never did. I know in his heart, if he has one, Jim knew it was true, but he simply did not care. The whole reason they kept me in court fighting all those years was so they did not have to pay child support. At one point in our conversation, I said to him, "If you make me come back to Florida to fight for my son, I swear I'm going to fight you like a rabid dog." Silence on the other end of the phone. "Do you hear me?" I was not screaming. I was just being very matter of fact. Still silence. Then, quietly, for the first time ever, I cursed directly at Jim. "You're a fucking pussy." Do you hear me? A fucking pussy. Well, that ship had now sailed. Later that day, I first contacted the Department of Children's Welfare in Orlando. Heidi Elba later informs me they cannot find Amy at the address I provided for them. Shocker. February 12th. I have my attorney Paul Kwilecki file a second supplemental petition to modify custody, visitation, and other relief. February 18th, I coincidentally run into Amy out and about. I cannot remember where, but I tell her that I know about her drug use and that her ex-husband Brian has sent me an affidavit. The following day, I met with Orlando attorney Sean Hunter. He instructs me to go to Dallas's school, Lakemont Elementary, to get Amy's current address. I went to the school. I met with Dallas's principal, Dr. Stevens. I was not permitted to talk to my son. He said they were informed I was coming. Police were called. Earl Tisdale, Jim's bodyguard, shows up and confronts me in the lobby. The principal notifies him I have been very courteous. Eventually, Amy shows up with her head shaved, completely bald. I did not even recognize her while she was walking towards us. After reminding her of our first contempt hearing, she reluctantly gives me her new address with a question mark on it. March 15th. I drive 800 miles to go to Dallas's karate tournament in Tampa, Florida, where I meet with my nephew Ryan. Dallas was the only student without his competition gear and could not compete in any of the combat skill events. Once again, teaching my son not to be prepared. Amy wanted me to stand with everyone for a picture, though. I reluctantly did. April 18th, I receive a fax from Paul Kwilecki's office. He has filed a motion to withdraw as counsel of record for the petitioner, which is me. Why did he do that? In the petition, it said that we had irreconcilable differences and that I wanted to represent myself in this matter. Let me read to you from the deposition I took after acting as my own pro se attorney. Bunch of Latin words I don't know how to pronounce. Of my former attorney, Paul Kwilecki. Direct examination. Andrew, that's me. How long have you known me? Paul, 5 years. Me, do you consider me to be a kind of straight shooter? Paul, absolutely. Me, did I ever tell you I want to represent myself in this case? Paul, no. Me, have we ever had irreconcilable differences before April 18th, 2008? Paul, never. Me, do you believe me to be a fit father? Paul, absolutely. Me, did I ever meet with Richard D'Amico, the guardian ad litem, before the case, February 11th, 2005? Paul, I don't recall if you met with him before that, but I recall his recommendations, and we went against his recommendations. Fortunately, we prevailed in the matter. Me, were you notified of an emergency hearing in 2006? Paul, I don't think I was. Me, now if you were, you didn't call me? Paul, I would have called you had I been notified. Me, do you have an assistant in your office? Paul, uh-huh. Well, I got a She's done, and someone else is coming in on Monday. Yeah, Helena is not with me anymore. Me. When did you first hire her? Paul. 2005, I think it was. Me. But after our last case? Paul. Yeah. After our last case. Me. And her husband was employed? Paul. He's employed by NASCAR as a jet mechanic where they work on the planes. At the airport. I don't know. I guess it's at the airport. Me. And when did you first inform me you couldn't be my legal representation anymore? Paul. When Helena became concerned about him losing his job, and then, it was about 6 months ago. Paul. Still. I will say that child adores him. He is a wonderful father. Me. Thank you very much. Paul. I know I wasn't asked. Me. Thank you so much. Paul. But he's a wonderful father. Michelle Kane. Very good. Paul. Good luck, Andrew. May 12th, I receive an affidavit of Brian Patrick Barrett, Amy's ex-husband. I, Brian Patrick Barrett, first being duly sworn, deposes and states as follows. Deponent is making this affidavit at the request of Andrew A. Ashley. Deponent is over 18 years of age. Deponent is a resident of New York State. On about February 16, 2003, Deponent met Amy Lee France, formerly known as Amy France Barrett, hereinafter Miss France, while attending an automobile race at Daytona International Speedway in Daytona Beach, Florida. After Deponent's introduction to Amy France, Deponent and Miss France commenced their friendship and began dating shortly after. During the Deponent's friendship with Miss France, Deponent became aware that Miss France and Andrew A. Ashley, hereinafter Mr. Ashley, are the natural parents of the then and now infant child. On or about the 17th day of September 2004, while Miss France was visiting Deponent in Westchester County, New York, did Miss France propose marriage to the undersigned Deponent, and for reasons now unknown to the undersigned Deponent obliged. Mrs. France requested and became engaged to Miss France. Regrettably, on the 5th day of February 2005, Deponent became duly married to Mrs. France in Cedar Key, Florida. Prior to Deponent's engagement to Miss France, at some point commencing in August 2004, Miss France made some disparaging comments concerning Andrew Ashley's care of Mr. Ashley and Mrs. France's infant child. Therefrom, during August 2004, Deponent introduced Miss France to members of a private investigation company, said company being Ambrick Incorporated, hereinafter Amrick, which was headquartered in Syracuse, New York, and had offices in Volusia County, Florida. Therefrom, Miss France employed Amrick for the purpose of investigating and conducting surveillance on Mr. Ashley. Subsequent to Miss France's employment of Amrick, Deponent became personally involved in the oversight of Amrick's investigation and surveillance of Mr. Ashley. Deponent also oversaw Amrick's billing of Miss France, and in fact made some personal payments to Amrick for their services rendered on behalf of Miss France in connection to their surveillance of Mr. Ashley. After several months and multiple hundreds of hours and tens of thousands of dollars worth of surveillance being conducted on Mr. Ashley and not finding an inkling of wrongdoing by Mr. Ashley, Amrick's investigation and surveillance was now bordering on harassment of Mr. Ashley. Therefrom, in July 2005, Deponent requested both Amrick and Miss France that the surveillance of Mr. Ashley be discontinued. Against Deponent's advice, Miss France, through Amrick, continued with her surveillance of Mr. Ashley. Mrs. France and Deponent were divorced in October 2005. From September 2005, for Deponent has no knowledge of Mrs. France's activities in relation to Amrick or their surveillance of Mr. Ashley. During the month of April 2006, James C. France, the natural father of Miss Amy Lee France, through his counsel Random Burnett Esquire, offered to pay Deponent $181,800 in consideration of deponent, among other things, not to speak with Mr. Ashley. Deponent believes that this offer was made by James C. France with permission and consent of Miss Amy Lee France for the purpose of thwarting Mr. Ashley's efforts to have a meaningful relationship with his child. The end. Amy's attorney, Michelle Kane, files a motion to transfer her for improper venue, attempting to move custody case from Volusia to Orange County. I hire attorney Jim Ricks to represent me. Respondent's motion is granted by the Volusia County Judge, Juliana Piggott. She was literally in the courtroom for about 20 seconds. I could not even have picked her out of a police lineup. May 28th, my new attorney files a motion for reconsideration or alternatively for hearing, which was denied. Then I received my second motion to withdraw as counsel on record for petitioner from my new attorney. I guess I'm on my own. I quickly realized I cannot afford to fight this case traveling back and forth from Tennessee and decide to move back to Florida. I forgot to mention, while in Tennessee, Tussle and Jimmy Fox's German Shepherd, Lucy, had puppies, to which I got to keep the pick of the litter. I chose a female which I named Penny, who is now living with me. Tussle was great with children. I'm not sure how Penny was going to be. So when I called my friend Dominic to ask if I could rent a room from him for a while, I told him about the situation with the dogs. When we first arrived to Dominic's house, I'm worried about Penny with his younger daughter Sheridan. She is probably about 4. Apparently, there was nothing to worry about. Penny took to Sheridan much in the same way Tussle did with Dallas when he was young. I had a little bedroom which I was very grateful for. However, I was sleeping on a box spring, which after everything I have been through, did not really matter to me. I needed to find work though. It is time for me to test everything I have been working on. I did my first solo show June 17, 2008 at Traders in New Smyrna Beach. I was an acquaintance of the owner, Dave, from years ago. I really appreciated this opportunity and I capitalized on it. I did shows there the following week on the 24th and 26th as well. My confidence as a solo artist was slowly growing. I can do this on my own. Over the next 2 years while I was representing myself in court, I was also working all over Volusia County. Traders, Harley-Davidson, Wing House, Saints and Sinners, Porthole, Jack's, Daisy Dukes, all multiple times. July 15th, 2009. While performing at Red Tails, I hear the horrible news of the passing of my childhood friend, Daniel Donald Melnikoff, Danny. While I'm not completely shocked by the news, I am saddened. If there was anything I could have done to help him, I would have. I felt horrible for his mother, Kathy, his brother, Michael, most importantly, his 8-year-old daughter, Sydney. Cause of death, overdose. That part bothered me tremendously. The day of his funeral, I could not even bring myself to go. I did have a legitimate excuse that I was working that day. That was not the real reason, though. I could not get over the overdose. Even highly under the influence of opioids, Danny was one of the nicest, most sincere people that I had ever met. The only thing that he would lie to you about was his sobriety. Rest in peace, my dear friend. Now, acting as my own attorney, the first step was to subpoena and take depositions of my former attorneys. The next step was on August 22nd, I filed a subpoena for Jim and Sharon France, who were commanded to appear and take depositions on August 29th. Neither one of the witnesses showed up for deposition. Keep in mind, all of this stuff costs money. The next step is filing a motion with our fourth new judge, Honorable Judge Thomas Smith, to meet with my minor child in closed chambers to discuss custody modification. Dallas is now 9 years old. The court should grant this request because it's in the best interest of the minor child for his voice to be heard. The respondent in this case had Dallas in therapy for over a month and a half without my knowledge. If Dallas is going to talk to a stranger, I suggest it should be the person who's going to have a big impact on his childhood years. I request that the court hold a hearing on this matter and grant relief, specifically requested, and any other relief that the court may deem just and proper. August 9th, 2009, Amy's attorney, Michelle Kane, files a petition to make me pay Amy France's attorney fees. I just got sued for $144,658.74. September 5th, Amy's attorney, Michelle, files a motion to seal the court files and also files a motion for a protective order for all discovery, including depositions in this case. Thankfully, due to the sunshine law in the state of Florida, her motion was denied. Otherwise, I would have to leave a large portion of the actual evidence out of this book. Her next motion was to compel discovery and to examine and inspect my computer hard drive. Please keep in mind, I now have to travel back and forth to Orlando from Daytona to defend myself against these baseless motions. Her next being respondent motion for psychological evaluation. This motion was also denied. It is now September, and I file a motion for civil contempt and enforcement against Amy. Her attorney now files a motion for an appointment of a guardian ad litem. For those that do not know, it is supposed to be an attorney that represents only the minor child. That motion is granted, and Brent M. Rainey was appointed to our case. We will get to him in a minute. September 18th, I take depositions of Amy Lee France, Janet Lee Jester, Amy's housekeeper / nanny / drug dealer. Joni Popesca, former acquaintance of mine. He is the Volusia County Sheriff who booked Amy into jail on November 11th, 1999, who ended up dating her. October 10th, I sent subpoena to Volusia County Court Judge Juliana Pickett. She was set for deposition on October 24th at 4 o'clock. October 3rd, I file a bar complaint against Amy's attorney, which reads as follows. This complaint is against Amy Lee France's attorney, Michelle Kane, who has personally been involved in my custody case for approximately a year and a half. I believe she knowingly, willfully, and grossly inflated her attorney's fees, considering I'm a pro se litigant in the nature of this case. I got sued for $144,658.74. Michelle also let me travel to get a deposition from her client's ex-husband. In her own words, star witness, to New York, October 22nd, 2008, knowing he had a gag order against him and his testimony would not be admissible in court. Michelle personally attacked my parenting in emails full of lies, baiting to get a reaction out of me. Michelle Kane knowingly lied on her client's behalf in a verified motion to deny visitation, which was thankfully denied. Furthermore, hoping to trick me by not explaining I only had 10 days to reply. On or about May 7th, 2008, I believe she met with Judge Juliana Pickett in closed quarters to discuss my case, requesting change of venue, which later that day got moved to Orange County without any explanation why. On October 27th, 2008, Michelle refused to pick up her phone for depositions via telephone of Bevan Carter Davies and Michelle Carter, which were taken in Marietta, Georgia. In light of the aforementioned, it is hoped that this matter will be looked into as soon as possible and with due diligence. The Florida bar did nothing. October 20th, I receive a call at 9:12 a.m. from Greg Smith, State Attorney Administrator from Tallahassee. His first words to me were, "What's up?" Huh? He tells me I had filed an improper subpoena. Our phone call lasted 10 minutes and 8 seconds. I told Mr. Smith I obviously did not file an improper subpoena because another deputy clerk, Mary Johnson, signed it. Who's to say you cannot subpoena a judge? October 22nd, I traveled to Lake Placid, New York to take deposition of Amy's former husband, Brian Barrett. Amy's attorney took the unusual step and had Brian's deposition video recorded. I sure do wish I could get a copy of that out of evidence. When I get back from Lake Placid, I receive a letter dated October 22nd from Assistant Attorney General Gerald D. Stevens. A copy of the order quashing the subpoena for the deposition of Judge Juliana Pickett, also granting Judge Juliana Pickett a protective order from further discovery. October 24th, I take a deposition of Chrissy M. Ferguson, Amy's best friend for over 10 years. She spent the whole time cursing me out and refusing to answer any questions. Amy's attorney then sent notice of taking deposition of Bevan Davies Carter, the drummer I had to fire, and his wife Michelle on the 27th day of October in Marietta, Georgia. I have to be back in court in Orlando October 28th, which happens to be my birthday. I filed a cross notice of taking deposition of Bevan Davies and Michelle Davies via telephone. I go to Scalfani Williams Court Reporters October 27th for this purpose. Again, keep in mind, I'm just a singer in a long-haired rock and roll band, and all this shit costs money. While at the Court Reporters, I cannot reach anyone from the offices of Donovan Reporting in Georgia. Then I filed a verified motion of limine to exclude testimony. The only reason they spell all this shit in Greek is to confuse the average layman. I am not average. In my motion, it states, 1, I sent faxes to Orange County courts and Michelle Cain's office stating notice of cross-examination of both witnesses. 2, I talked to Michelle Cain's secretary and made sure faxes were received and told secretary to have Michelle Cain contact me. 3, I then called Michelle Cain's cell phone and left messages. Was not exactly sure how telephonic testimony was to be handled. 4, I called information to get the telephone number for Donovan Reporting and was automatically connected 3 times and could not get through. 5, I made another attempt to contact Michelle Cain and her cell phone at that point was turned off. I believe the depositions were canceled when I never received a call back. A little before this time, I have become friends with the gentleman at Hooters who I have previously mentioned. He was an attorney for the Department of Children's Welfare. His name, Bob Hunter. Bob had come to see me at some of my shows around town, and I had come to know him as being a friend. At his suggestion, I did my first show at Red Tails in Daytona Beach, a nightclub owned by Hank Foley, who also owned the dive biker bar Crook's Den. I did dozens of shows for him at Red Tails. You might have seen Hank on Fox News recently. He ironically, or not, became Donald Trump's private pilot. December 5th, 2009, I filed a bar complaint against guardian ad litem in my custody case, Brent Rainey, which reads as follows. This complaint is against Amy Lee Francis' attorney for young Dallas Ashley, Brent M. Rainey, who has personally been appointed as guardian ad litem in my custody case since the ordered date October 30th, 2008. He did not do his job. He failed as being an impartial observer. Brent never once met with minor child Dallas Ashley and myself together in the 7 months prior to my case going to trial. Secondly, Brent said in his report, he paid special attention to a previous guardian ad litem. That guardian ad litem never met with me at all before my trial in 2005. He knew I never met with that previous guardian before he testified and gave his report anyways. Then he further states how he does not think my child has been coached by me and his teachers, saying that Dallas is above average intelligent, yet he gives no weight to where he wants to live, even though Dallas expressed he likes spending more time with me. The guardian finds mother has above average disposition towards fostering my relationship with Dallas. Evidence and testimony all tell otherwise. He says Amy wants me to have more of a role in Dallas's life. She filed a verified motion for no contact with the minor during Brent's interactions with us, March 25th, 2009. Furthermore, he talks about Jim Francis' desire to facilitate the relationship between us. Jim has not returned any of my numerous phone calls in the past year. Brent also admits to ignoring crucial testimony in this case from Amy's ex-husband, Brian Barrett, even though he's a practicing attorney in New York State and lying under oath could cost him his career. He also failed to interview many of the witnesses asked for in our initial contact. December 11th, 2008. Only 1 out of 6 to be exact. My mom. I believe he knowingly and willingly was biased in his approach and execution of his job in this matter. This affects more than just me. My child's well-being is at stake. The Florida bar did nothing. April 12, 2010. Brent Rainey files a verified emergency motion to suspend minor child's visitation with father. At some point, we had a 2-day trial in front of Renee Roach in Orlando. Before the actual trial, we had pre-trial, where the only 2 people on my witness list were Amy and myself. Michelle Kane had a long list, including the Francis, Earl Tisdale, the private investigators, Janet Jester, and many more. At trial, a few days later, before we entered the courtroom, all the Francis and their minions were outside the courtroom, basically already celebrating certain victory. They did not think I was going to be able to call any witnesses except Amy and myself. When we get inside, I get to call the first witness because I am the plaintiff in this case. My first witness I would like to call is Jim France. Miss Kane interjects. Objection, Your Honor. Judge Roach asks the grounds for her objection. Miss Kane says that Jim is not on my witness list, to which I argue he's on your witness list. Her objection is overruled. Jim has to testify that he was reimbursing Amy for her attorney's fees and all the surveillance being done on me. The second witness I call, Jack McCulloch. He testifies to the length of the surveillance he had performed on my son and I over the past 2 years. I asked if he ever saw me endanger my son. He tells a story of how I let him go inside Dunkin' Donuts by himself. I questioned him if I was parked right in front of the glass door and could see my son's every move. He admitted I was. I asked him if we went to that Dunkin' Donuts every Sunday and I was possibly teaching my son the independence of having to stand in line, place his order, pay for the donuts, and get his change. Dallas did a fantastic job. Another question I asked, did he ever see me smoking marijuana in front of my son? His reply was, I don't know what you were smoking. To which I then asked, did you ever see me smoke anything in front of my son? To which he replied, no. Your Honor, why would he answer the previous question the way he did? The whole hearing was a complete shit show. Amy not recalling anything, Janet, her housekeeper, lying about everything, the guardian Brent testifying on the Francis behalf, along with the child therapist John Gerbach, who is also on the payroll, both doing their absolute best to take my son away from me. After 2 days, Judge Renee Roach says that she has to commend me on the way I represented myself in her courtroom. She says that I made better objections than most of the attorneys that practiced in front of her. Then she concludes with, Andrew, these sheriffs are going to escort you out of the courtroom and the building. I'm excommunicating all your parental rights. What the fuck? All my parental rights were taken away? 0 contact with Dallas? Not even able to say goodbye to my son? Later, Brent went on Facebook to boast. I don't know, I spelled lawyer cocaine and hose for like 10 years and that worked out fine. Years later, Dallas would inform me that the therapist, John Gerbach, took him into a room and told him that he was never going to see his father again. Fuck that dude. Coincidentally or not, every club that I've been playing for the past 2 years all said the same thing to me. Sorry, we can't use you anymore. Fortunately, my contract with Jim France is finally over, and I can release all of my music my friends and I have been working on so hard for over a decade. April 20th, 2010, 4:20. A week after my son was officially taken away from me by the courts, Smokin' Mother Nature finally has a CD release party at the Coliseum in Daytona. For the show, we did a huge promotion with Hog Radio 95.7, which included an on-air morning interview. Slated to open the show are The Syndicate, the band that used to sneak me into bars when I was 16. Dirty Cherry, my buddy Seth Stroud from Tennessee's cover band, and the Thundercats, featuring Michael Makepeace, a local cover band from Daytona. As far as my band, the main songwriter with me, Jimmy Fox, did not make it down for the gig. And Will, who played on 80% of the record, canceled at the last minute. So James Hogan has one of his friends from Jacksonville come and play bass. I do not even know his name. I know a local guy named Claudio who played drums in some local bands. I asked him if he would fill in on the drums. Claudio and I were anticipating, rehearsing a couple days before the show. We were going to be playing approximately an hour-long set with original music. That never happened. I literally met the bass player 30 minutes before we hit the stage, as if I was not dealing with enough stress in my life. As far as the show went, the opening acts were awesome. We had Hutch Hutchinson running the mains and Joey Negron running the monitors. It's our turn to hit the stage. The very first song we do, my microphone is not quite right. I look over to the monitors and Joey is nowhere to be found. I later learned he was doing coke backstage with one of his friends. Highlight of the show, we had Brian Bassett come up and jam every now and then with us. Brian recorded the slide guitar on that track for the album. Then we played Freebird and his hit single, Play That Funky Music, which all the other singers from the other bands got up and joined us. Finally, we ended the night in typical Smokin' Mother Nature fashion with the Beastie Boys' Fight for Your Right. We made it through the night. It was not fantastic for me. However, most of the people there seemed to have a really good time. Sometimes your life is all fucked up. And trust me, I know what fucked up feels like. But let me tell y'all, at the end of every fucked up situation, there is a light. And that light is fucking beautiful. Actual stage banner by me at the end of Sometimes. There was a lot of great video footage shot that evening, which I was able to use to put together a video for that song. After the show, I was ready to kill Joey. I was trying to get to him in the alleyway behind the club, when suddenly I got swooped up by Gary Orman's 6'4", 220-pound son, Junior, from behind. It was one of the more important days of my life, which I spent a fortune on. I was not satisfied with the outcome. In some very real ways, I felt sabotaged. After the show, I wrapped up some loose ends around town and started making plans for my future. The Francis have now taken my house, my work, and my son away from me. What's left? I'm going to file an appeal. In order to do that, I need to get all the transcripts from all the hearings in my case. In total, the appeal was going to cost me about $10,000. That is money I simply did not now have. That was not going to stop me. My relationship with my son was on the line. The only thing I had worth any value, other than my musical gear, was the Smokin' Mother Nature van. Over the years, a few people have speculated about what actually happened. At the time, I talked to my mom about it, and I told her my plan. The truth is, under oath, I burnt that motherfucker down, and I collected the insurance money. After some research, I realized the statute of limitations have expired. I feel comfortable telling the truth. My truth. Man's got to do what a man's got to do. I collected all the transcripts and spent all the money on the appeal. It never even got heard. It was just like taking $10,000 cash and throwing it out a window while driving down the highway. I have now sadly committed insurance fraud. The corruption I'm facing is real. I need to get out of town and start over.